Hello, what's up guys? Good evening, it's Simon here. Welcome to Selco Digital YouTube channel and welcome back to our React Native live coding series, which is every Wednesday at 8 p.m. as you already know. I'm sorry I'm slightly late. I only just finished rendering a video which is a review of app.js conference, which was held in Krakow, and we recorded a review video to have a bit of a retrospectives about the conference, and we just went through it. We discussed the speakers and the level of the conference and everything. So it's going to be available on the Selco Digital YouTube channel tonight. But yeah, let's get back to our live coding. As you probably remember, last week we started doing the Storybook. We created a repo where we initialized it with Expo, and we integrated it with Storybook. We could see the Storybook in our browser, so that was cool. That was really nice to see. And today we're actually going to be adding some of the components to the component library, and we will add a few stories as well, just to make sure that the components are described and we can preview them in the browser, so we can see what the component looks like and what it does, because that's the whole idea of a storybook. It's just like kind of a preview of your reusable component. I'm also going to automate the process a little, so whenever there is going to be a new component added to the components directory, that is going to create like a generic kind of story based on certain criteria. That's the idea, at least. But let me get rid of my my email client, as I don't need that, and probably can get rid of Slack as well. I've got a chat open, so if you guys want to comment on the chat, ask me some questions, or if you yeah, if you actually have any questions, do let me know. I'm gonna be monitoring all of those messages in the live chat, so we can have a bit of like interaction, and we can definitely have a nice session over here tonight. So I'm actually just going to just spit some water in here. There you go. Nice and easy. I'm just going to post it on my Twitter for everybody else to actually watch. If you don't know, okay, perfect. All right, good stuff. Yeah, right. So let me just bring chat back. Okay, I'm actually going to have it in a pop-up window, so I don't have to have my YouTube open. Anyways, right. So let's get back to our storybook. Let's see where we are. So I've got the repo open, as you can see. Let me just check what's changed. I'm actually going to undo all of these changes, as this is how we left it last week. We basically got it to work, and then we committed all of the changes to our repo in GitHub. So let's see if that still runs. So that's what we did. We actually went through the manual setup. We installed the Storybook for React Native. We created the relative files, and we started exporting it as well, just to make sure that we've got everything in place. And I think to start it, we have to run the Storybook command. So I'm just going to have another terminal open there and run Storybook. So let me actually see. So okay. Hey, so this is our Storybook. This is how we preview it. But there is also another way of saying this, and that's the device add-ons. So basically, when you run your app, that should be available straight away. Which is cool. Let me see. Okay. So let's just try and run this simulator and see what happens. So basically, we've got this import here, which imports the add-ons. Okay. So we've got hello Storybook right there, only because there are no stories added whatsoever. There is just some default story, which is basically this. But as you can see, at the same time, you can preview it on your mobile, and you can preview it on web. So the idea is that for people who don't have the mobile device or can't really access it on their mobile device, or run the app or whatever, then they also have this opportunity to run it on the web. And the idea is that this is going to be a monorepo. This is actually going to be hosted on probably GitHub or somewhere, and then people who are actually going to be going to this repo, they will be able to preview all of the components from there, right? From the repo. They won't have to run anything. So designers or business people or whoever needs the access to the component library, they're going to be able to preview it on web. But also as a developer, you have this opportunity. You have you can also preview it on your device, which is great. And then the next step is going to be to start adding the stories, right? So this is how you write stories. It's actually under the stories, under the stories directory, and this is where you write it. So this is the view. This is the view, and then you basically just return whatever you want in that story. So you can keep adding more stories to it. Basically, the idea would be that you would have a story per component. You can read a bit more about stories on the Storybook website. Basically, that's what it is. So as you can see, for example, here there is the story for a button, and this is how they do it. So then you can see that in the left-hand side sidebar there is a button, and there are different options of that button, right? But Storybook is actually very customizable. It's JS in the end of the day, right? So you can actually do whatever you want with it. You can style it. You can write your stories the way you like. You can really go crazy with it. You can really do what you really want. And yeah, I mean, that's what we are going to do. So we're going to have our source files, where we're going to have packages, and those packages are actually going to be our components. Okay, so the idea is that this is going to be a monorepo, and each package should be, so each package is going to be a separate component, and each package should be agnostic. It should be kind of independent, so that whoever is going to be using the component library will be able to import that particular package either individually, or they could just import the entire component library. So if they only need, like, let's say the news feed from the component library, they could just import that particular component. Or if they want the entire component library and build their app with different blocks, then they would just import the entire library, right? So we're going to have a, oops, oh, that's weird. Not actually sure what happened there. Looks like all of the icons are just grayed out. Okay, there we go. We are back. Right, so there is going to be our source folder, where we are going to have like main index, and that main index is going to be exporting either the entire library or individual packages, individual modules, if you want to call them. But let's start with our button. So by default, we'll have the index.js file in there, but also we're going to have our styles. I'm actually trying to think what is going to be the best approach for this. Maybe we won't have styles for now. Maybe I'm gonna just keep it very simple. So by default, so basically we want to import React, obviously, from React, and we'll probably need some modules from React Native, and then we'll definitely want to have prop types from prop types, and that's it for now. So then we can create it as a stateless component, as just like a pure function kind of component, where you can define your props, and then that is going to return some sort of view, right? And basically then the button will have the prop types, and those prop types are gonna be defined here. It will definitely have some default props, which are going to be defined down here, and then you just want to export it down below. So we definitely will need to import a button from our React Native. This is where it's going to be, this is where it's going to be returned. So we'll probably want to put some sort of children. That's what you basically want to display in between. And then you probably want to have OnPress function. It's required. So those two props are actually required, because you always want to pass in either some sort of text or whatever you want to put in your button. If it's going to be the icon or something else, you just want to return something in there, right? So the children prop is required, as well as the OnPress prop, because button is usually clickable or pressable. So definitely want to have the ability to pass the OnPress prop, right? So then OnPress by default, it's just going to be an empty function, because we don't know what it's gonna be just yet. So I do know. Let me just bring the button from React Native docs, just so we know what kind of props we can pass down. So by default, the button from React Native, and that's version 59, this is the latest, by default it accepts OnPress, title, accessibility label, color, disabled, test ID, and has TV preferred focus. So those are the props that you can pass to React Native button. And by now we are going to use OnPress, which is going to be passed down from our props. So our button is going to have the OnPress prop, but also React Native button has that kind of prop, so we just want to pass it down basically. So this is it for now. Another thing that we are going to need is the style sheet, and we're going to create a style object. where we're going to put some styles in. So I do like to have some sort of hierarchy when I create the components, especially when I create when I add a lot of different attributes. I quite like to have them ordered alphabetically, because then, so when I kind of break it down like this, I can see exactly where everything goes, like so. So I can see that there is OnPress, and I quite like to have each attribute on a separate line if there are more than one. So the rule is, if there is more than one attribute, you just break it down to multiple lines, and that should be the rule for all kind of components, just to keep it clean and keep some sort of like a style guide sort of thing. I'm probably going to add it to my lint rules at some point, just to make sure that if there is going to be more contributors to this code base, that they will follow the same rule. Okay, so by default, I'm going to have a button, and that button is going to have some background color. So I'm not sure where I'm going to have the colors yet. I'm thinking of having some sort of reusable file, which might be maybe within the packages, like let's say maybe styles, and then within styles I would actually have text styles.js, and then I could have like colors.js, and this sort of things, right? So as I said, that these components should be independent, and they shouldn't really be dependent on anything. I still want to have some sort of way of having a theme, and I could use maybe I don't know, maybe some other solutions, but for now I'm just going to import it from the colors. So in the styles, I'm actually going to have the index file as well, where I'm going to import let me think how I want to do it. Colors from colors. I'm actually trying to think what's the best way of doing this right here, because then colors from styles. I think this is going to be a bit better. So then I can do, styles. I'm gonna call it with the capital S, just so I can differentiate it. So then, whenever I want to use it, it's gonna be styles.colors, for example, and then this is going to be, let's say, a primary colors primary. Okay. So what I'm actually going to do right here is that I'm going to have, let's say, constant called, let's say, colors, or color palette, or however you want to call it. Then I'm going to have a primary color there, right? So my primary color is going to be, I don't know what it's going to be. Let's say it's going to be, let's actually find some sort of color palette. So there is this color palette generator where you can just get some colors. Actually going to change the settings just so you guys can see things properly. Nope, I don't want to watch the tutorial because I already know how to use it. So I'm gonna copy this color over there. There is also going to be a secondary color, and my secondary color is going to be this blue. We could have a tertiary color. Tertiary color is normally just some sort of accent color, if you like. So there is the primary, secondary, tertiary. Okay, cool. I'm actually going to export this constant, and then I'm going to export another one called Grayscale, where we're going to have our white color defined and our black color defined for now. But we might also have you know, light grays and dark grays colors in here. Okay, so this is how it's going to be. Boom. And this is how we do it. Colors, okay, perfect. There's also the grayscale. Or I can do like this. Okay, brilliant. So this is basically our button. Then we're going to add the FontFamily, or we can be, yeah, I'm just thinking how to do it so we don't have to reuse it everywhere, and I'm just trying to kind of centralize all the styles, so then we could actually have export constant text styles where we're going to have our body object defined, and this is going to be like a main kind of main style. So now, because we know that there is the colors, we can actually get it here. So probably the Grayscale is the one I was going to use. So the color is going to be Grayscale black. FontFamily is going to be the Helvetica, and then font size. Now this is the thing. the font size should be defined by, well, all of this kind of things should be defined by your designers. And if you don't already have it, or if your designers haven't actually defined it for you, then you have to come up with some sort of grid or a pattern or something, so you don't have the sizes different everywhere. You can probably define like basic styles or basic font sizes. Oops. H5, H6, so these are your headings. There's the one for the body or copy, however you want to call it. I quite like to call it body. Then you also want to have, I don't know, maybe some sort of small copy size. But mainly this is what you're gonna be using, right? So your body font size should be used wherever, and let's say there is going to be a heading. Wondering how I should call it. Probably H1 is a good one. So then we can have Grayscale, black, FontFamily. Now, there is actually one thing I want to do here. So I would love to define the font family, just so I don't have to like get it, or maybe let's call it fonts. It's going to be a bit better. Let's call it fonts, font family. Maybe I'm actually going to call it body, fonts, or maybe, yeah, fonts body. So then, basically by doing this, I can define different ones. Let's say there is going to be a different one for a heading. Helvetica, bold, I can't remember what the name is, but let's just use this as an example for now. So then I can define my font family for a heading, which is taken from the fonts object. And then, as you can imagine, for now, this is quite easy to maintain. But as soon as you start having like multiple components or like quite a few components, and then decide that you want to change the font at some point, you would have to go to every single text style and change it accordingly, which is quite annoying. It's like you would have to do it multiple times, which is not really nice. There is probably, so I can probably do this one as well here, where I can set the body to 14, and I can set H1 to be like, I don't know, 16, then H2 to be like 52, then H3 to be, I don't know, maybe 36, then maybe H4 is going to be 26, then H5 is going to be 22, forgot the comma there, and H6 is going to be 16. Maybe this is you know, something I would like to have, right? So then could probably just call it sizes as well, just to keep it simple. We could probably yeah, no, that's fine. because we are in text style. So I was wondering if we start adding like different containers in here, if this is not going to be confusing. But we are in text styles, so we can just call it sizes and then have this kind of setup here. So for the font size right there, we can have sizes H1, and you might think that because it's H1, I could probably define the size down there. But then, you know, once we start adding more styles below, you don't want to scroll down this file all the time. You just want to have some sort of like an index at the top where you can just define all of these kind of things, right? Which is also quite nice. You can also put like a comment down here to make sure that you separate it out from the rest of the code, so you know where your constants are and where your styles are. Then obviously you can just carry on doing this kind of thing. Oops. For all of this, so that's going to be H2, H3, H4. And as you can see, it's got the same heading. Maybe we want to change the heading font to something else for H5 or H6. I don't know. You know, it's all up to the designs we've got. But let's say we've got something like this for now. Okay, so we can go back to our button, and we can see that there is a text style called body, and we know that it's got some defaults, so we can potentially just grab it from there. And we can use the spread operator to actually use that style here, and then extend whatever we want to extend it with straight after. So we know that this entire object is actually right here, and then we're just extending it with something particular to the button, right? So this is how you could kind of make the code reusable and have your styles kind of organized in a way right here, and your color palettes and things like that. Because if you think about it, you're gonna be reusing the same sort of setups, same sort of configuration for the styling for other components as well. Because if it's a card, or if it's gonna be, I don't know, some other components, the avatar, whatever it is, then you want to have this, those styles reusable in a way, right? There is a saying that the components should be so agnostic that whenever you take them away from the component library, they should still work. And yes, I do agree, that's fine. I mean, but because this is going to be our component library, this is going to be used on our project, and I know what kind of styles I want to go for. It's not gonna be like an open source component library where everything has to be agnostic, blah blah blah, and people might want to use those things differently. I just want to kind of enforce the styles onto the components, and I want to reuse those styles for other components to keep things consistent. So that's why I'm kind of having like a common styles folder, and which I'm gonna be pulling into different components. But everything else is going to be very agnostic. So the component itself is going to work without anything else. So you won't have to import like the whole component library just to use the button, for instance. the button is going to work without it. The only part that will have to be pulled into it is the styles, which is fine. It's still okay. Another solution would be to just kind of like repeat yourself and have all of these styles written down here, and then it will be completely independent, and then it will be absolutely 100% agnostic. So it's really up to you how you wanna deal with it. But this is how I'm gonna do it for this particular live coding series, because I know exactly how I'm gonna use it later on. It's gonna be the component library of the components, and then those components are actually going to help me build the app that we're going to build later on. And that's why I called it Lego blocks, because I want to reuse those components and make sure that they're still kind of consistent, because it's still gonna be a styled component library, which I will like to reuse later on. Okay, brilliant. So we've got our packages over there. We've got our component over there as well. So now let's get back to our storybook and see how they're actually how they're importing it and how they're using it. So okay, so this is exactly what I was going to use, or I was going to build. I didn't know this was the thing out of the box. So this is the section that I'm very interested at, and it's the loading stories dynamically. So whenever you add new component, or whenever you add a new package to your component library, and the story is going to generate the right files for it, and it's going to be available to preview straight away. So I was hoping to well, I was actually going to build something custom, but it looks like they've got something already there ready to be used out of the box, which is great because it's going to save us some time, and we don't have that much time yet. But yeah, so blah blah blah. So this is it. Storybook config file. Okay, perfect. So we just need to add a config file to our storybook folder, because as they say, Storybook uses Webpack, and that means we can use the required context method to load the modules dynamically. Okay, there is a node for React Native Packager, which resolves all the imports at the build time, so it's not possible to load modules dynamically. And the React Native Packager is actually Metro, as I remember. So there is a third-party loader called React Native Storybook Loader to automatically generate the input statements for all stories. So it is also possible to kind of work around this. But anyway, so let's get this fixed. Let's get this started, and I'm actually going to grab those things from the packages. So there are a couple of things I don't quite like with this setup, and I think I'm going to change it slightly. So they suggested you add .stories.js files to your packages, right? Now, that is a good thing because you have all of the files in one place. So basically, that would mean you would have to add a pattern stories.js. So that will be our stories. I actually made a mistake in here. I'll have to call it pattern.js. So all of that is gonna go in there, and basically I'm going to export it as default pattern. Let me think. No, I'm actually wrong. Let me think. There is a reason why I'm doing this. So I want the pattern to be actually called the pattern. So the index for this particular package, and it's going to have, there is going to be a package.json file here too. So basically, this is going to be like a standalone package, but also I'm going to export everything that's within this package to all the the rest of the packages. So basically, the packages will. This is going to be like the whole pack, and I'm going to be importing every single package into this file, and then exporting it as well. And also, this is going to be the entire component library. But every single one is going to be an individual package with a standalone kind of setup. So every single package will be a standalone module in Node modules, right? So you're going to be able, and everything is going to be named quite nicely. The whole component library is going to have a namespace, and that namespace is going to be React Native Lego blocks. And then with that namespace, so it's going to be called React Native Lego blocks. And then from there, you will be able to install just the pattern, or you could go for I don't know, card or whatever that is. But you could also so this is how you would install the individual bits. But you could also do, if you had the entire library installed, you could just do import pattern from, and then that would be the React Native Lego blocks. So that is the beauty of it. But you could also do import pattern from React Native Lego blocks button. Okay, so depending on how you want to use the component library, it's going to be possible to either have the entire component library installed and then import whatever you need from that component library, or you could install individual modules and just use those if you don't want to have the entire library installed in your Node modules, because it might be, I don't know, it might be too large for you, or whatever that is, you know. Okay, So let me just copy this over here. So what we want is basically that. It's called onClick, but I'll actually have a different. I actually have a different prop which is called OnPress. I quite like to have a space between like the native, well, sorry, not the native modules. I quite like to have a block of imports from the dependencies, and then I quite like to have a space in between the imports that I do from within the project or within the code base. So that's why I quite like to import things like that. And then if I'm actually going to import some constants or something else, I would have an extra space as well. So I quite like to kind of group these things. So I'm actually going to have a very simple module in here. So the story of a button, because that's what we just added. And they want it to be, well, we want it to have that button with just text. So we can just do this, and because it's React Native, we also need to import text component from React Native, and we have to wrap our text with a text component. So basically that is going to be our next component that we might add, you know, like instead of having it right there, we will just add it here, and that could be done as well. Or there is another way of doing this. So instead of importing this text here, we can just add it directly in there. So let's say if it's a text button, if it has a prop, let's say if it has a prop of type, and then that prop type equals to, let's say, text, for instance, then we're going to wrap it with text. I think this is probably going to be a better way of doing this. Otherwise, it's just going to be children, right? So there you go. This is how we are going to do it. Okay, let me save it there. Yeah, I should get rid of this guy. Roll it back. Okay, so now we can have a text. Do you see how I add the props alphabetically? Sorry, not the props, the components from React Native. I quite like to have things organized alphabetically like that, because I just see straight away what's imported and how, and so are the props. So everything is in alphabetical order, and this is just, I mean, you don't have to do it, but since I started doing this, I think it's just so much easier and so cleaner, because you just see exactly where everything is and in what order. So then you don't have to think if you want to put things on the top or at the bottom. It doesn't really matter. But anyway, so that's what it is. We also have to add the prop type, which is going to be a string, and by default this is going to be a text. Okay, so now back to our button stories. Let me actually close a few a few files in there because I'm just being confused now. Okay, so back to our story. So you can see that we say hello button. You can actually say hello world, not really hello button. That's silly. Cool. Let's see if that changes anything. Probably not. Probably we have to rerun our storybook just to make sure that everything is aligned. Right, so everything in SRC packages is going to be picked up if it ends with .stories.js. Perfect. And it loads the stories, configures everything. All right, cool. So now let's just kill those. Let's just kill those processes and run it again to see if it's still working. Hopefully, it will work. Okay. Okay, interesting. So first of all, I can't see our story there. Oop. Right, I see what's the problem. Let me just get rid of this package.json for now. Just because it's empty, and it might cause some issues. But eventually there is going to be a package.JasonPay component because we want that to be a standalone package, basically. Oh, still not getting there. Okay, let's see if I have done something wrong. It doesn't really add it anywhere, so I'm assuming that perhaps the Storybook config file is not being picked up properly. Let me try to get rid of that file. I'm wondering. What is up the world? Wondering if that file was kind of like overwriting the whole thing, or requires stories. Right. Let me think. I'm wondering if This is interesting. Configure as so perhaps export default function.
What is up, the world?
So this is going to be our config where I want to config from config. Going to start the whole thing again. What I basically want to do is that I want to we're actually running out of time now, but I think so. I'm gonna keep it for the next week. But basically, this is gonna be the idea. So the idea is going to be to initialize the config, and the config is going to require the stories on the fly, where then we can just export the storybook, and I will debug it next week and see why it doesn't run. But that's basically the whole idea. Could just probably try do this instead, just for the sake of this demo. So let's try to run this again. Let's try to run that again. Probably not gonna change much. Nope. Still can't pick up the right story, which is a shame. But I will get into it. I will get my head around this, and this is going to be the next episode. We are going to be resolving this issue and loading the stories dynamically, then focusing on creating the actual package.json for our button component, and we're going to be submitting it to npm as a monorepo, as a package, so we'll be able to actually install it from other repos by defining the namespace and the name of the component. So this is gonna be us next week. For the time being, thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like the video and to subscribe to our channel. There is gonna be loads of interesting videos coming up, so don't miss out, as it's going to be really interesting. But that is it for tonight. Thanks again for watching. Hope you enjoyed it, and bye for now.